you wake up, you look at the calendar, and you realize that there's not another page to flip over because it's 2024. And there's only one way to celebrate that. Well, the snow falls outside while it's nice and cold, while we wait for the rest of winter to finish itself off. And that's by listening to some heavy metal music. And then you can listen to some people talk about it, which is what's going to happen now. Hello. Welcome to this.
That was perfect.
Great. I was
Great.
nervous about that. I was kind of like, I'm not sure if this is going to land. Maybe it didn't.
I think it did.
It landed. There you go.
Yeah. New year, new intro.
Yeah. And a bit of snow
yeah.
as well. Surprisingly, in the UK, it's not as common,
good.
but we've had a little sprinkling. Didn't settle,
on.
but it was quite pretty watching it outside. Just the little.
Yeah, I had a buddy of mine in high school that came over from the UK, and before moving here, he thought that snow flurries were when like snow dances on like the roads in the wind. And so when he got here and he experienced the first snow flurry, which is a downpour of snow to the point where you almost can't see, he was like, I was grossly underestimating the power of a snow flurry.
It happens.
It happens. Yeah. So welcome everybody. I'm Michael Michelle. We are joined by Grace. Hello.
Hello, that's me.
Yeah, let's start off just with the general, what are you listening to? How is your holiday? Just a little catch up. It's been a while.
Yeah, well, I'm listening to Neil Morse, and my holiday was Neil Morse.
Nice.
I think to sum it up, yeah, in anticipation of attending yet another Morse Fest, I have been listening to a lot of Neil Morse, and I was in a little bit of a competition to see if I could get him as my most listened to artist for 2023, which I did.
Good job.
Because I wanted to beat King Gizzard, and I did by like 20 plays.
Oh.
So there you go, a lot of Neil Morse, a little bit of King Gizzard.
That's nice.
And I've been listening to a band called Home and Office as well, which is a complete curveball. And their whole thing is like they make MIDI music.
Oh, okay.
And it's all very like, I don't know, it's computer music for computers. Like it's just very, very MIDI. And it sounds like a little bit goofy, a little bit game soundtracky in a way. But it's quite satisfying to listen to. So I'm dabbled into some other bits as well, some Trevor Rabin, some Peter Gabriel.
Yeah.
Catching up on records that have come out over the last year, just sort of solidifying them in my brain. I went to a record store as well and picked up physical copies. I picked up a CD of Technical Ecstasy from Black Sabbath, some John Coltrane, some Frost, and yet another King Gizzard album, because there's just always more. There's always one that you haven't got. So
yeah, even myself, who's been collecting their records since 2018, 2019, there's still some that I don't have, and I'm like, you know what? I'm at peace with not owning a complete collection of theirs.
Yeah, there's some bands where it's like, yeah, no, I want everything, but
yeah,
I think with King Gizzard, it's not viable. It's not financially viable.
Well, I put King Giz in the same category that I do with Frank Zappa and Buckethead. It's like, I know I'm never going to complete that discography, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think for me, it doesn't help that they don't release all their albums on CD. So you can't even get them. Some of the ones you want to get. So I've got 6 now.
Okay.
Which is
fair
size. Like a good amount. And
Yeah.
I know a couple others as well, fairly well. So.
Yeah.
But that's besides the point.
That's besides the point. One thing that came into my mind as you were talking about like year-end lists and trying to get a particular artist as the number one thing that I was wondering, and I don't think Spotify does it, but I was wondering if like Last.fm or if any of the other kind of tabulations of and summarizations of the year-end lists, if they take into consideration the amount of minutes listened to an artist, because if that were the case, like last year I listened to Toe Hiders I have little to no memories of these memories. Like that should have been my number one listen to album just based on minutes played, but because it was only a single song, it only said that I listened to that one track, X number of times. So I was wondering if that is ever taken into consideration, and that, sure, I know Kate Bush last year and this year was my number one artist, but in terms of minutes, like her tracks very rarely go over 6 minutes long. I wonder if bands like Neil Morse, for example, who has tracks that are into the 20 or 30 or 40 minute runtime, would kind of take that crown away from her.
Yeah, well, I've noticed that. So Last.fm does kind of have the ability to calculate that, but they don't really surface it in their interface. So they've dropped their last year now, which is effectively an equivalent of Spotify Wrapped. So for those that don't know, Last.fm's like a music tracking service. It integrates with like Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, and it keeps a log of everything you've listened to throughout the whole year. And you can go back and look at the stats. So I've been using it pretty religiously, and they've released their roundup, which includes all of 2023 versus just some of it, which is what the Spotify one and the Apple Music one does. It seems to miss a bit. And they've upgraded it quite a lot this year. They've chucked in some more stats, some more fun numbers, some more charts. There's a whole new little UI for it that looks a bit nicer, but I don't think there's any surprises in there because I keep an eye on it throughout the year. So it's like I kind of know who is doing the best in terms of what albums I listen to the most, what, artists were the most popular. But there's, like stuff like top new artists, the spread of daily scrobbles, the listening clock, which shows like what hours of the day you're typically listening to music. All of that kind of stuff, which is, I think, quite interesting. But yeah, so they do have a listening time. So supposedly for the whole year, I spent 35 days and 13 hours of my time listening to music.
That's not bad.
Which I don't think is... I mean, I know other people where that number is a lot higher.
Yeah.
A lot higher.
Yeah.
But it doesn't delve down into... Yeah, the amount of time you listen to an artist. But there's other third-party services. So there's one called Last.fm Time Charts, where you can kind of have a look, and it will tell you how much time you've spent, how many hours you've spent listening to any particular artist. So looking at this for the last year, the rankings start to change. King Gizzard jumps a spot because even though I have more plays of Neil Morse, the play time of King Gizzard was higher because a lot of the Neil Morse songs were shorter. So
right,
yeah, it's kind of interesting to see some stuff jump up and down depending on the time listened. So yeah, that it's kind of available, but Last.fm don't really do a good job of showing it anywhere in their UI, which I think is a real shame because I think it's objectively the most interesting stat rather than like the number of listens necessarily. It is that like time spent listening. There's an album by a band called Insomnium called Winter's Gate, and it's one 40-minute song.
Yeah.
And I've listened to the album a couple dozen times, which should be a lot of scrobbles, but it's like 20 scrobbles when it.
Yeah.
And if another album that was split up properly, it would be like 200 or 300. So it's kind of like it doesn't always work.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. No, I find it fascinating. And I know Spotify Wrapped will show you how many minutes you've listened overall, but it won't do that kind of dive down information. And I'm sure there are third-party sites that will scrub that information and display it for you, but yeah, it's not readily available on the interface for good old Spotify.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah. Before we transition directly into our episode, because I think we're going to postpone the news for our next episode, which will be, letting people in behind the curtain here. We'll be doing both of these kind of back to back, this episode and our next episode. But for in terms of news, we're going to hold off on the news until our next week's episode. We're going to spend the bulk of this episode just going through the 2023, see what's up, see what's new, just kind of take a look back at 2023, and then in our next episode we'll take a look forward into 2024, what we're most excited for, both concerts and albums. I've got some fun predictions that I'll list out to everybody. I think that's a good way of doing that. So let's talk about 2023. Do we want to talk about those records that we liked most, or maybe talk about some of those records that disappointed us the most?
I mean, I don't think any records necessarily were complete disappointments. There are ones I didn't enjoy as much, but I think maybe let's start with that, because there's a couple that I'm like, that wasn't as exciting as I thought it could have been, right?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
I'll open. I have my little book of notes.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just look through my book. And I can start with one here, which I think is rather inoffensive. Mono released a record this year, and I have given it a 6.5, apparently. It's a couple months since I wrote that number, but I can probably explain my musing quite well. So I gave the studio record that they released a pretty good shot, because I saw them early in 2023 at a festival called Portals. They're a headliner. They were incredible live. I really, really loved the show. Really, really exciting to watch. But for whatever reason, that didn't translate to the studio album for me as much. And I don't think that's necessarily any fault. I've had that with bands before where I've fallen in love with the studio album, but then when they play it live, I've been like, oh. So this is kind of the inverse of that, where they put on an incredible show, playing their music, but the studio didn't. I just didn't fall in love with it, which is kind of I'm frustrated myself. It's like I wanted to like it more and really get into them this year after seeing them, but didn't quite land.
Well, that's a shame. Yeah, I've got a couple here in terms of the disappointments. I'll just rapid fire them really quickly. All of them are prog. None of them are like metal or anything like that. Zio put out True Waves, and Zio had the title of my favorite record in 2020 with their Flower Tutoria. This one just left me lacklustered. Southern Empire came back after, I think, 5 or 6 years. Their album Civilization from 2018, I think it was phenomenal. And their album from this year just didn't click with me. Same with Lazuli, with their Ons. Just didn't.
I also have that written down, which I'm very sad about, because I really love them. I think they're such an incredibly unique sounding band. Just with their instrumental lineup.
You were the one that got me into them too.
And I loved Dieter Bohlen and some of the earlier stuff. I own quite a few of the records, but Ons this year, it didn't quite grab me, and I never really went back to it. I don't know why. Maybe it's like a saturation thing, because I've listened and explored to a lot of Leisure Light albums, and I don't think this is necessarily anything different. They have changed guitarists, which maybe has changed it as well. I don't know. Yeah, they weren't bad, but it's just it just didn't grab me, which I think is a shame, because I wanna like music. I hate not liking stuff or being feeling apathy towards something.
Yeah, and I think the biggest culprit for me for Ons was just Dieter Bohlen and some of their previous ones had this kind of grand epic scale to it, and I just felt with this new one, it was a lot more subdued, a lot more personal, and that can work, but it felt like I don't know, something that was from like a Marillion album from the Haygarth era, but from like the 90s that
Yeah.
didn't quite connect with me. So
I think as well it was kind of a shame that they followed up with that after Denude. Denude? I don't know if that's the right French pronunciation of that word, which was like a unplugged acoustic record of some of their other songs. So they kind of just done like that very soft and mellow release in that sense. I think it's harder as well because obviously I don't speak French, so I don't understand the lyrics. So it's kind of harder to latch on to what the story is. So I think if it's not clear that there's a big, a story or stories within the individual songs, through whatever reason, and that's kind of part of it's on me for not trying to look up the translations and that kind of stuff, but yeah, just didn't quite land. Even the instrumentals, I was like, no, I don't need to look into this more. Anyway, that was
the other two that were kind of duds for me, the new Flower Kings record, Look at You Now. Everything that they've put out since their hiatus after Desolation Rose was just, I don't know, lackluster. Like Islands was okay, and By Royal Decree was fine, but Waiting for Miracles and this one I think are just Roland Stolt kind of solo stuff. I didn't really care for it. The big grand symphonic sound of the Flower Kings I think are pretty much all but gone, unfortunately. And the one that I think disappointed me the most, the one that I was most looking forward to and the one that kind of disappointed me was Rick Wakeman, unfortunately, with his Gallery of the Imaginarium.
Really? I enjoyed that.
I don't know, man. Maybe it was because I was coming with such a high expectation after Mars, like after the Red Planet.
Which I didn't like as much.
Oh, that's so interesting because I love that record. That, for the longest time, like that was my number one album of 2020.
Wow.
And so maybe because I had such a high expectation going into it, and I should have checked myself because Rick Wakeman for me is always a mixed grab bag. Like I either love it or I'm indifferent, and it's kind of where I'm at for this one. So those were my kind of disappointments of 2023.
That's fair. I can definitely fly a couple of others.
Sure. Bring them out.
That I have that are lower down on my list. Again, not, terrible and listenable. It's just like, I didn't enjoy this as much.
Yeah.
The Ocean.
Oh, see, I love that one.
Came quite low. Holocene. I definitely grown to like it a bit more, I think, since that record came out. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first one since Phanerozoic Part 2, right? That was
this was the one that follows up Paleozoic Part 2.
So my issue with that is that I really fucking loved that last record. Yeah. I thought it was incredible. I had it on repeat constantly. The riffs like stuck in my head like da-na, da-na-na-na-na, da-da.
Yeah.
Like that opening riff and that it's just so good. It's so tasty. And I spun that record so much. And then I was spinning that aside Pelagial and aside Phanerozoic Part 1. And I was like, oh, this is so good. This is incredible. Like, I'm so into this band. I love them. I even saw them live very, very early this year. I think it was the first gig I went to. They were supporting Carnival.
Yeah, that's great. And I think this year they're supporting either they're headlining or they're supporting Persephone, like one or the other.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went for Holocene and it just didn't quite have that that big riff in it that really stuck in my brain. But Phanerozoic, it's a tough comparison because Phanerozoic 2 really, I played that album to death, basically, so many times. So I think it's hard to compete with something that you love so much and have kind of a objective view, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what I find
it didn't. Still
Yeah,
awesome.
oh yeah, like what I find hilarious is I bought the record on LP. I bought it on a record, um, and it doesn't have Unconformities, which is my favorite track off of the album, but it didn't include it. So
Oh,
like
was that like a
that's
leg
kind
thing
of
then?
it must be because it's a single disc. And I find a lot of albums nowadays, and this is one of the biggest pet peeves and a rant that I'll go on at some point. Um, like a 40 to 50 minute long record will be split across two LPs when it really doesn't need to. And I think this record, even though it's stretching into the 60-minute mark, um, I mean, I've seen records that have one side with like 32 minutes on it. So like it can be done. It compromises the sound quality just a bit, but you can still do it. And I don't know. Like, I don't know whether, like, I would love to have Unconformities on this record because for me, that's the centerpiece. That's the crowning jewel. And by leaving it off just to make sure that if it's on one record, I don't know. It's almost like the monkey's paw. You know, I wished for it to be on one record, and
That's
this
fair.
was the
That's fair.
drawback. Yeah.
I'm running into that, the physical limitations with that at the moment, just as a kind of like side tangent. But I got a car a couple months ago and it only has a cassette deck in it. So
Yeah.
one of the cassettes I picked up, I don't know, how many, 20, 30 now, which I wasn't expecting to be able to do, but you can just go into a record shop. There's just like a dusty shelf somewhere in the back corner. And they're
There
like,
is
it's like
always.
50p for a cassette.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow, yeah, no one wants these. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So I've been having a field day with that. It's like
Oh
my
yeah.
music collecting addiction has resurrected itself and it's now not as offensive on my bank account, which is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I'm finding tapes are what LPs were like back in the mid aughts, you know, when you can just walk into a record store or whatnot and pick up like 5-6 records for $20, you know. You can do the same thing with tapes right now. But soon they're going to get wise and they're going to find out that we actually do listen to tapes and then jack up the price to like $30 a piece, you know.
Yeah, I do still need to get like a freestanding unit at home, I think, for cassettes. To be able to.
Yeah, I've just been stacking mine. I've got a handful. I think I have the entire Rush discography. And then a bunch from my. Yeah, I mean, I've been collecting tapes since I was a kid. Like, I don't want to go too far in this tangent, but like, tapes were my first media of music. So like the first physical thing of music that I owned was Weird Al's Bad Hair Day on cassette tape. So I have like half of Weird Al stuff on cassette. I've got a couple like Supertramp records, a couple Kate Bush tapes, most of Rush, and just whenever I see a tape, I want to pick it up. Let's do it. Absolutely.
Tapes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But no, what I was going to say is, so I've got the Yes album tape, and the order's messed around. The clap is like the second to last track, I think, rather than
that's weird.
second track on the record. So it's like jumbled. And I
Yeah,
don't
'cause
know why
I
hadn't noticed it before, but I was had a friend in the car a few days ago. We're driving back, long drive, and I was like, pick a tape, any tape. He chose the Yes album. We put it on, and then he there was like a visceral reaction when the clap didn't start playing, and he was like, oh,
Yeah.
what's happened there? And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. I hadn't even noticed it, which is, I think that says more about me.
Yeah, I
the
think
clap's still
I
on
would.
the record, so I wasn't like, oh, it's missing. Like, it's still there.
Yeah. Yeah, because if the clap doesn't immediately play after that first track, and then go straight into Starship Trooper, like those 3 tracks are like bang, bang, bang. It would feel like I ran into a brick wall, you know?
Yeah, but I think Starship Trooper's just so long that it would like, because what is it? I've seen All Good People and then Starship Trooper. So it's 2 chunky tracks. But anyway, that's besides the point. I should look in my book and see what else did I have that wasn't as exciting as I thought it might be. The only one, I mean, I could mention Patent Seeking Animals, but
Yeah, it was fine. I
It
just
was, yeah, it was fine. It was just
for
the same, more of the same. It didn't
yeah,
feel very inspired for me.
I've never like, unlike say like Spock's Beard, which is kind of what this group came out of. There hasn't really been an album from Pattern Seeking Animals that I have loved. Like I've really like grabbed onto and been like, yes, you know. Whereas post Neil Spock's Beard, you know, there's a self-titled work, there's X, and there's Brief Nocturnes that like yeah, that's one of my favorite 3 record runs. But Pattern Seeking Animals, outside of maybe Prehensile Tales, I just never really got into. I'm like, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other one that I think maybe is worth mentioning was the Soen record.
Oh yeah, I didn't even do a review of that one. I think I just lumped it in with one of my like big album roundups.
Brutal. Yeah.
Yeah.
I listened to it and it was fine, but it does feel like more of the same. I mean, I did manage to catch Soen live this year, so it was great. Like, it landed live, I felt like, but it did just, I don't know, it's just one of those albums that blends a little bit too much into the rest of their discography. Like, I feel like what makes an incredible band is when an immediate listen to albums don't do that. You know, you think of an artist like Haken, for example, there's a clear, like, definite identity between each record that you identify within a few minutes of listening.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like this was just like, oh, it's another Soen record. Okay, cool. Parked.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's talk about, unless you had anything else.
No.
No, let's talk about some of those better albums. Let's talk about some of our favorite albums.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've got a lot. So where do we want to cut the limit at? Like top 10, top 5, top 15? What are we going at?
Oh, I don't know if I am strictly going to be listing off top albums. Like,
okay,
I've not really got. I've got a couple of top lists for different things.
I gotcha.
Different publications and stuff I've written for, but none of them quite cover everything, I feel like.
Oh.
So yeah, it's a bit of a hit and miss, but I can open maybe with Blossom from People Slicer.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Very heavy record, very angry music, proper modern like metal, I would say, if I had to describe it.
Okay.
There's some really cool like serene moments on it as well, where it's kind of like, you know, you have these kind of angelic vocals going on, and then it's back to the brutality. So, you know, it was just a record with incredible contrast, incredible dynamics as well in the mix, and it just, yeah, it really stood out to me. People Slicer have definitely sort of solidified themselves in my brain as like top artist of 2023, or like not the top, but you know, one of the top in my personal listening
pretty close up
experiences.
there, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
How about you? I'd say we do one each at a time and see how far we get before.
Okay, sure.
Before it's 2025.
Yeah, I had quite a number of like, and mine's always eclectic, right? Like I could move them around so that I've got my prog stuff on the one side, my metal stuff on the other side, and my pop stuff on the other side. But I think I'm going to go for, I'll start off pretty strong. I'll start with my favorite record of the year. And this one, I think they label themselves as adventure rock. And I think I gushed about this album earlier in the year when it first came out, which is the album from Bear Ghost. Their album Jiminy was the one that was the only one on my YouTube channel that got the masterpiece status.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and like I so very rarely give them out, just so that when an album comes out that I feel that strongly about, it's not like diluted, right? Like that's one of the things that I always wonder about when I watch some of my contemporary reviewers, where they're always giving 4.5 or 5 out of 5 stars. You know, it's like, well, if everything is perfect and everything is like top tier, it dilutes when an album that really does make a big impact comes out. And that's what I felt with Jiminy. You know, it was fun. It was exactly what I needed this year. I guess the best way to describe it for those who aren't familiar with Bear Ghost's sound, like I was, if
Like
you
I am
take,
right now.
like you are right now, they got their start doing a lot of covers of Disney popular songs. You know, like Poor Unfortunate Souls or Be Prepared or the King Louis song of I Want to Be Like You from the Jungle Book. And made them more kind of like pop punk, like a Green Day or Blink-182 or Sum 41. So very fun, very poppy, very accessible, but very energetic. And they kind of took that essence and ran with it. So that's kind of the feel of this record. Each song has their own crescendo moment in it that I really, really appreciate and love as a lover of progressive rock. The key changes are a lot of fun. And yeah, it's a very short record, but each track is just extremely fun and infectious. So yeah, I recommend checking it out.
I mean, more than recommend. Masterpiece. Oh,
Masterpiece. Yeah, masterpiece.
all right.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Cool. All right. I'll check in another one then.
Okay, let's do it.
Periphery 5. It's not a genre.
Ooh.
This was like an early album of the year.
Yeah.
And I kind of kept loving it, honestly.
Uh-huh.
Very, very fun. Very technical. Spencer's vocals on that record were incredible, I think, in my humble opinion. And it definitely stood out to me as something fresh from the band. It felt like an upgrade, like a move forward with compared to previous material, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I spun it quite a lot. I remember going on lots of walks early last year, just Periphery 5 in the headphones, and just off I go on a silly little adventure. And it was kind of incredible.
Yeah.
And to top it off, which always helps, I think, with me falling in love with the record, is I got to see them play songs from it live at a festival this year. So it just really solidified, watching them just whip out some of those tracks, seeing Misha absolutely shred his hands, like just incredible. Such a talented bunch of musicians, and definitely something that stood out this year, I think, for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when they topped Hail Stan, I loved Reptile. I love a lot of the tracks from Hail Stan. Even now. So, when I still go back to Gentis Nada it still kicks ass. It's still really heavy.
Yep.
I love that one.
It just doesn't there's no chill on that record. Like normally I like the soften that there's no chill, which is angry.
Yeah, it's pretty balls to the wall. Love that. Well, you picked a heavier album. I'll go for a heavier album on my side. For the longest time, this was my favorite record of the year until I heard Bear Ghost back in like October or September. And this was an extremely, extremely divisive record. There are those who love this record, and I am in that camp, but there are also those who hate this record with a fiery passion. It's rough. I've seen it on so many worst album of the year lists, and the biggest reviewer of music currently on YouTube, the Melon himself, Anthony Fantano, gave it the worst record of the year status. It was the worst record.
Wow.
But for me,
you're building this up.
I know. But for me, this was my favorite metal record. and I've seen this on a handful of best records of the year lists as well, and that's Avenged Sevenfold. That's Life Is But a Dream.
Yeah, you know what? I
Yeah.
kind of agree. That album is incredible. It's such there was a lot to chew on in that, and you're just like, oh wait, what happened there? Oh wait, no, hang on, what? Huh? Who? What? And it's just all over the place. And I think the more you listen to it, the more it kind of like starts to glue itself together, and that's when, you really start to unlock the joy in listening to that record, in my opinion.
Yeah, I remember, I believe it was you were texting me as you were listening to it, almost like a live tweet, being like, what is this record? What is going on? What am I listening to? Why are you doing this to me for this stupid podcast? But
That sounds about right,
yeah. I the more I go back to it, like, it's probably the most listened to record of the year. The track Nobody and Cosmic. Cosmic makes me just weep. Like, I turn into a big ball of mush whenever I hear that track. And it's so interesting because, like, all of the negativity that this album has gained, I feel like it could be applied to, if I had to nail down, like, as a whole for the year, the metal album of the year, I would probably give it to Sleep Token, just with how much influence that album has had on the metal community as a whole.
Yeah, I think because they're a fresh artist as well, that's expanded out from this ballooned from this sort of not insignificant but much smaller audience into not quite household name status. But I think you kind of struggle now to find the metalhead that hasn't heard of Sleep Token at the very least. So
but like all of the negativity that this album has been experiencing were kind of my opinions of Bring Me Back to Eden or Take Me Back to Eden or whatever that Sleep Token record was called. And all the praise that record was getting, all of the, notoriety and all of the kind words that album was getting was what I was feeling about Life Is But a Dream. So it was very interesting to see the discourse of these two records play out almost in tandem with one another. It was a very interesting experience throughout 2023 of these two records. So,
there you go. All right, I'm gonna throw in another one then.
Let's go.
This is another tasty boy, another heavy record. Probably my most anticipated, I think, album of 2023. And that was Terror Management Theory from Temic.
So good. So good.
I immediately, on hearing those first singles, I was like, oh boy, here we go. Here we go. And I remember, so for context, I worked with Diego a couple of years ago. Who's the keyboard player of Temic, and also the old keyboard player for Haken. I worked with him a little bit, sort of helping with my own material, like sort of developing ideas and learning some stuff about production. And I heard like little twinklings of, he was like, yeah, I've got this thing, like it's gonna happen. It's pretty cool. I've written some tracks. I'm like, oh, okay. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and it's here, and it's kind of everything I want from an album. I would say this maybe is my album of the year, but I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily the most like unique and creative one when comparing it to something like Avenged Sevenfold, or the most like technically impressive one when comparing it to something like Periphery. Yeah. But it ticks a lot of brain boxes for me. I love prominent, and I don't just mean like a synth solo here and there. I mean very, very prominent music that's built around synths. The bleeps and the bloops, the silly noises, are all throughout this record. There's so much of it, and it's so dense and hard hitting as well. But then you got these beautiful vocals as well from Frederick Klemp, super ethereal, super like I don't know, almost operatic. He's really refined his sort of vibrato technique. It's like it's chilling at points. It really is. You've got Eric Gillette on there, who's just shredding like the whole time. Like you kind of don't even think about it, and he's just like, oh wait, hang on, no, yeah, he's just shredding. It's like you kind of start to take it for granted, I think.
Yeah.
And then Samantha Sanders on the drums, just fucking going for it at points. There's lots of cool little fun moments on this record where I feel like it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek in some of the references. You know, like sort of not plagiarizing, but like using popular almost like overdone compositional techniques. I can't think what there's like, it's called like the fill, but it's not called the fill.
Okay.
I should really know this, but there's like a particular drum fill on one of the tracks that's like one of the most sampled drum fills ever. Like, maybe if not the most sampled. And Samantha Sanders just like replicates it at like pretty fast tempo. And just like and you're just like, oh, that's a bit cheesy, but then everything else going on, you're like, oh wait, hang on, no, that's just like one cog in the machine. I don't know. I really liked it. I thought it was really cool. I think it's, you know, an incredible debut album for a band. Although I think that's not really fair to call it that, because everyone in that band has written multiple albums before and produced other people's works and worked as session musicians for other records, and you know, they're all it's not really a first album from any of them, so I think that's unfair. But as a first collaboration between musicians, I think is very cool to see, very satisfying to kind of have it come together and see Diego find his feet after departing from Haken.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually had this record. Oh, I got to sneeze. Just give me 1 second. There we go. I had this one higher up on my list of year-end than the Haken record. I think my Haken record was 14 and this was 13. And for a year that had so many debut albums from prog metal, this one was one of my favorite. The only one that beat this one out was No Spoon with their record Opus. Just a fantastic symphonic metal record. If you took like Black Clouds and Silver Linings from Dream Theater and smushed it with Haken's Vision, you would have Opus. But yeah, that was the only one. And we had a lot of really, really good new prog metal stuff, like Archrist's album that came out, the Anchorites album that came out, It All Begins with Loneliness.
Love that as well. Incredible.
You know, so many really, really good new bands coming out of the woodwork. This one was one of the best. So, and the more I listened to it, like I got it right off the beginning, and then the more I listened to it, the more I enjoyed it. So, yeah, great pick.
Yeah. I think we should do 3. We're getting a bit long on time, so maybe we do 3 quick fire, just like this is good, this is good, this is good, and then.
Yeah, I think that'll give us what, 5, our top 5 in that case. Yeah. So spitfiring really quickly here. The new Moon Safari record, Him Lay Back in Volume 2. Did you get a chance to listen to that guy?
No.
Have you
get killed for saying that?
No, that's all right. Have you dove into Moon Safari at all?
I've still not, and I feel like at least 5 or 6 years ago I saw you do a video on Moon Safari and have like asked me several times, and I've just nope. That's my loss.
Yeah, I love them. They're great symphonic retro prog. This is one of their best records, and it took like over 10 years to get out. This is a great place to start. I would also start with their first record, A Doorway to Summer. I would follow it up with Bloomyud, or however they pronounce their second record. Those 3 records I think is really, really good. And the first 2 tracks off of Lover's End, Lover's End Part 1 and A Kid Called Panic. all fantastic work. Yeah, I would say, Grace, get on that. You have some work.
No, I know. I should.
That's all right. Quick fire. Continuing on. I Am the Manic Whales record, Bumper Book of Mysteries. Just absolutely loved. It was channeling Ryo Okamoto from last year with Myth of the Monstrous. Same writing collaboration going on here, just minus Ryo. And then one that kind of came out of nowhere that I loved was Green Lung, This Heathen Land. It's doing everything that I want a Ghost record to do, that they're doing. And one I'm going to sneak in, just right under the one that got me into black metal this year was Liturgy.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed that record actually.
Love that record. Yeah, 93696. Got me into Victory Over the Sun. Got me into a bunch of really great black metal. But yeah, some great stuff. So those are some like quick fire, just getting into the top there. What do we got? What do we got for you?
All right, I'm gonna be even faster. We got Catatonia, Sky Void of Scars. I was too fast. We've got
I followed it,
Catatonia,
but
Sky Void of Stars. Sky Void of Stars. There we go. I'm normally fine with that. Great record. Enjoyed it. Came out in the year. Fun. Good record.
Yeah.
War of Being Tesseract. Very cool records. Again, that for me had the kind of ocean vibes that Pharaozoic 2 had, where there's like very memorable riffs in it. So that did a lot of work for me. And then we have Scar Symmetry, the Singularity Phase 2. I've been waiting for that album for a long, long time. It delivered.
Yeah.
It was good. It was fun. It was the same, but it was good. And I will slip in one little bonus one. I think.
Ooh, I'd love to hear it.
Too. No, it sounds very cheeky. I'm going to stick in the Dragon album from King Gizzard.
Yeah.
I did like that a lot. I've not listened to it as much as I should have done, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. And given I listened to so much King Gizzard last year, they've got to get mentioned a little bit at least. And that record was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, both records from King Giz this year were great. Silver Chord, I loved.
I mean, I would say I almost preferred the Silver Chord for a number of reasons, but it's less metal, so maybe not quite as deserving for this kind of list. But so I'll go with the Dragon album. But yeah, both very, very fun.
Very fun. And I think just for time-wise, that will do it for us this episode. Tune in next week, or I guess next episode. Maybe it's going to come out next week. Maybe it'll come out the week after, where we look forward to 2024, what we're most excited for. I've got my predictions, some things I would love to see happen. And yeah, I think we might even have a review for an album that will be maybe out by then, that both of us have been grooving to. So
we will see.
We'll see. If you want to drop us a line, stay connected, give us an email. You can do so at the email address themetalheadpod@gmail.com. And yeah, I think that's the best way to stay in touch. Ask us some questions and just say hi. So for now, I want to say thank you, everybody, for tuning in, dropping in, and thank you, Grace, for staying with us for another year, sharing some good music, introducing me to some good music, all the good stuff.
It happens.
And it happens. And to lead us into 2024, as we say every episode,
if they pick them up in the pit, then put them up in the pit. Happy new pit.